Ta-da! Welcome everybody. This is SharePoint Dev Weekly episode 33, and it is only you and me here, Waldek. What happened? Where's our visitors?
Yeah, we probably didn't pay attention or missed the memo or didn't plan anything. Can we promise to do better next week?
We can promise to do better next week.
We can promise to do better, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's been pretty busy weeks, actually, after the MVP Summit as well. And now we're heading on the slow curve towards the SBC and Build and the European Collaboration Summit. And it's spring and it's sunny. And we are running out of snow pretty soon in Helsinki, which is pretty cool.
You're running out of snow?
We're running out of snow.
Well, we haven't had snow. We haven't had snow for... to be honest, I can't really recall when was the last time we had. Well, that's not that bad. I think last time we had snow was in December or something. It would last like 3 hours.
There we go. Fair fine. We still have some on the terrace and backyard, but anyway, so that's a different discussion. What you been up to this week?
Last week, actually, this week I haven't done that much yet, but last week. The week before that I was over at the MVP Summit. I arrived on Sunday, and then on Wednesday I was back again on a plane. It's just like you plan these things ahead, and then like at some point it seems like a good idea, and then things shuffle, and then you get back home. It's like, oh, I am gonna be again on the road. So I was traveling to a customer to give them a training on SPDev. Basically, all up. Starting from things like the differences for things that we used to do in the past with WSPs and so forth and so on, to how we do things nowadays in the cloud with SPFX, even PMP, basically to talk about that. So we had, I did one day, which was pretty packed by itself, and then the other day was done by Erwin.
Makes sense. Was this the same customer you visited a while back already, or
no? There was another one actually.
Another one.
There was another. Yeah. And actually, the list of topics wasn't exactly the same, but there was a big match, especially around the areas like what we used to do in the past and what we do now. What are the pros and cons? Things to take into account, and then especially if you add to that the angle. So what if I am on premises? Because for many of them, that is the reality, right? And at that stage, that discussion gets really interesting, because like in the cloud we take many things for the fact just that they are there, right? For example, if you want to log things, App Insights is in the cloud probably the way to go. If you are on premises, there is no App Insights. And the moment you start to think, okay, so what do I need to do to be able to log in a similar way? Well, you need to have some kind of database API that is able to handle many writes, no reads, concurrency, and then tracking requests over clients, and it gets really quickly complicated. So just
to be fair, now I think we talked about this one in the context of the previous customer.
Yeah, and now we're here again, and it's exactly the same. Yeah, exactly. So it's still the same thing. Yeah.
But it is a massive change when you're moving from the on-premises to the cloud, no doubt. There are quite significant changes, especially from on-prem to the cloud. And then if you are already in the cloud, across the different technologies. But I think nowadays, obviously, everybody's using SharePoint Framework. So you wouldn't move the cloud to use add-in model anymore. You would use SharePoint Framework. So.
Well, yes, for the UI part, at least you would, right? Because like if you have a long-running operation, you need to elevate privileges or do app only. Well, you cannot do it in SPFX.
True. But then you do it in the backend using an Azure, and then you sign in. Yeah, anyway.
Unless you are on premises, for which you have to then spin another server, IaaS, host that, manage that, included in your DR patterns, and so forth and so on. So even that part gets quickly way more complicated than it is in a cloud, even given the fact that you have to go to Azure admin to ask for a site.
And then you have a additional infrastructure which you need to maintain, like you said, the disaster recovery operations and all of that stuff, which is unknown costs. Well, they're known costs, but they're unpredictable costs quite often, because they go down and up and down and on whatever it may be, depending on the deployment, which is completely different ballgame considering the, let's say, what is it, $15 in a month per user in a cloud, or $5, depending on what is your whatever is the contract. Well, or is it E2, E1, E2, E3? I don't even know. There we go.
Or E5, P1.
Yes, exactly.
T1000.
T2, yeah.
T1000.
V23 or whatever. Yeah, it gets complicated. But I think it's much more streamlined still than the classic on-premises licensing, which was super strange. So there was always specialists who were able to explain how do you save the money, right, in on-premises licensing.
Yeah, and I mean, and that was especially complex when you thought about internet sites, and there was like some of people were authors, and they had to have the edit license, and then there was the public license per front ends, and what if you had staging, and that was like really like, oh no, that's going down.
I used to be a MCS consultant for 8 years in MCS, being Microsoft Consulting Services. So before moving to the engineering, it's a organization inside of Microsoft. And for those 8 years, number one rule what we had for MCS consultants was do not talk about licensing. So whenever somebody started asking licensing, it's like, nope, I don't have any idea.
I have a colleague for that.
Exactly. Do not communicate anything on license because you had no clue. There was no clue to understand how much something will cost.
Yeah.
I have no idea. So
yeah, somewhere between 1 and 100.
Yes, exactly. on which currency? Well, I don't know. So
it depends, right?
Exactly. Anyway, so on my side, still kind of recovering and trying to catch up on things after the MVP summit. Those things really mess up the schedules and inboxes around all of the requests and actions and everything else. And we're still working on making sure that our documentation for 1.8 release is in an adequate level, because that's an interesting discussion always, the documentation, because you can always spend more and more time on the documentation, but then you need to actually maintain the documentation. We talked about this one in the past as well, but it's the interesting balance of how much do you actually want to have documentation, and what are the documentations which you kind of refresh, what are the things which we move away from, and what are the things which we just leave for partners and MVPs to document. And it's an interesting balance.
Yeah, and also the fact, like, when you have new version, like, what is the set of docs that has to be up to date, like the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Right, and because that the bigger it grows, well, you could even think that the more delay it's going to have on a release, because at the end of the day, there's only that many hours in a day, that many people who work on that. So at the end of the day, it comes to the amount of work you can do over a period of time. So
and then the question is also I lost my thinking.
That bombshell.
Bare minimum of the documentation, but then also what are the, and I lost completely. Whoa, that was interesting. Completely black out. And on that bombshell, let's actually.
I never had that with you. Like seriously, like this is the first time I see it live that you lost train of thought.
Yeah, it happens every now and then.
And then you'd be like, oh yeah, now I know. Now I know again. It's going to be like in the middle of something else.
That's fine. Anyway, jumping on the article. So, wanted to do a few first, which are Microsoft driven. One note, by the way, in here we're working on getting the SharePoint Dev blog to be teal as well. Now that we are actually starting to move to teal logos and everything else on the messaging. Finally, it's about time. But on next, so previous Friday, 29th of March, we released the latest version of SharePoint CSM and some new PowerShell commandlets as well. And the reason why I wanted to actually call this out, that this one actually has pretty cool capabilities. So, for example, you're able to define in the web level, so in the site level, search scope type. So we'll talk about this one when it will be truly available, but you're able to basically say that in this site, whenever somebody is actually searching, the default scope for the search functionality will be hub or a tenant or a site. And that's actually pretty cool. And then it's going to say that obviously on a text box as well.
So that would almost beg for a scenario where when you associate a site to a hub, you get site script that will set this flag to hub, because like if the site is a part of hub, you want to. I could expect that you might want to search within the hub.
At least in certain scenarios, yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. So that's pretty cool. Then there's some things which are, let's say, not understandable yet. We'll talk about those stuff slightly later. That's basically the property which you are able to then set the scope. And then on the tenant level, there was one super interesting, which is this one, enable ComSite, which is around enabling communication sites in an existing site. And right now, it's targeted mainly to be used to the enable SPO ComSite PowerShell commandlets. This is a SharePoint Online PowerShell commandlet already available, but it's not yet enabled. So, but it will basically then transform your root site collection of your tenant from a classic theme site to a communication site.
Woohoo!
Ooh,
cool.
Finally.
I think we've been waiting for that one for. I think the moment Modern was introduced, I think somebody in the audience was like, "Can I attach it to the root side?"
Well, technically, like we covered quite a few times in the SharePoint Dev Weekly, and that you can actually get to the modern experiences already today within the classic theme site, which is in the root, and just by changing the welcome page content type, or the page layout to be different. So you can technically get to the modern already, but this one they will then enable all of the other communication site capabilities, and you'll get rid of the left navigation completely. You'll get all of the default experiences like that. So, and for all of the new sites, new tenants, which are getting created, the root site collection is already a communication site. So.
Nice. But then is it empty, or is there something on that?
It's empty. It's
okay. So empty. It is an empty page. Okay.
Well, no, for the root new tenants, I think I can't remember which one is that. There's some sample content there probably, because it's one of the communication sites with the site designs, whatever they are. I can't remember what they are. The default selection of communication site, there are 3 different options, right?
Right. There is the topic, there is blank, and there is something else. Yeah.
And one thing to notice in here, there is an ongoing discussion, and right now this works only in the root site collection of your tenant, but there's an ongoing discussion that if there is a high demand, should we support this to be applied to any site collection? So if you have a classic theme site, you would be able to transform that as a communication site. That
interesting.
Would be kind of interesting as well.
Interesting.
But please give us feedback if that is interesting, so we'll know. Now, moving on the articles, so let's jump in here. So this is from Alex Terentiev. Alex is one of the MVPs in the Office Dev Sign. This is around the fact that right now the Sync to Teams button is still, it should be getting there, it should be working, but it's apparently not yet working based on his finding on 29th of March. So this is related on the fact that if you create a SPFX solution, you deploy that to the app catalog, you want to have that one exposed in Microsoft Teams. There is a Sync to Teams button, which unfortunately wasn't working there when we released 1.8. But now Alex is here explaining how to create the needed manifest manually. Now, the reason why I wanted to call this out is that, of course, this one is also in our official documentation since 14th of March. So the guidance have existed. And also, if you have a look on our guidance on creating those team tabs, we actually clearly call it out here as well. So technically, the Teams integration should work with Sync to Teams, but for now, you will now actually need to do the creation of manifest manually. So this is just a good example on the fact that our documentation we're trying to keep it up to date on every single day, doing with updates and all of that. And a massive background noise. That's our dog, by the way, but we don't.
Welcome. We have a guest. Hear that. Yes. We have a guest.
Yes. So my boy is coming from school. So, and this happens. So the timing isn't super optimal, but hey, these things do happen. Now, let's not worry about that. Now, Alex did have, though, a good alternative article or another article, which is around the connected SharePoint web parts using dynamic data. And dynamic data is something which is, I think it was in preview in 1.71 or 1.7. And then in 1.8, it's now in GA. Or wasn't it? Yes, I think it was. Or was it already in GA?
If it wasn't preview in 1.6 GA in 1.7.
That might have been the case, but the reason why
anyways, it is available.
Yes, it is available. We haven't talked about it that much because the first-party web parts have not actually supported the dynamic data too much. The first party, for example, the list web part has been missing the capability, and that support is now rolling out globally. So then you're able to create a web part which is then dependent on a out-of-the-box list web part. So you're able to kind of do those detailed list clicking and all of that stuff, which is really, really cool.
And actually, in the context of this one, I think it's really cool to call out the filter pack that we have in PNP.
Well, it's still in progress, but...
Well, it is in preview and things are being done, but at least the idea of it, the ability, like once all of these pieces ship together, you will be really able to build rich pages, experiences without relatively that much code, right? Because you will be able to set things up directly in UI.
Yep. And the filter pack is basically something which is led right now by Chris Kent. He's still working on the let's say the final versions of getting this one out. We had a really cool demo shown in the MVP Summit already on this one, but the challenge is that there's no screenshots or explanation what is a filter pack for now in the GitHub. But basically, what it is a set of web parts which you can use then to do connections between each other and connections to the out-of-the-box web parts. So really, really cool stuff like drop-down web parts and filtering and what was it? There's like multiple different filtering web parts inside of this, but it's coming. More details on that one whenever it is ready to go live.
Yeah, I think he showed it as well during the SharePoint Collaboration Summit in North America.
Sure.
In Branson, and didn't he also do a video for the one of the PNP calls?
I don't think he actually did that yet.
What?
So,
how come?
Yeah. We'll get it scheduled. So I can't remember that he would have done already. So but it definitely will be there in the future.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is from Alex around the connected web parts and how to make those things happen and a clarification from a code perspective. What does it mean for a connecting web parts between each other? So cool stuff. Now the next one here was around calling SharePoint REST API from Microsoft Flow. From a what is the name? Piyush.
All the way on the top, Vesa.
Here we go. Piyush. Yes. Well, there was just a face, so I concentrated on that one. But yeah, so how do we call a SharePoint REST API from Microsoft Flow? Definitely useful guidance, definitely useful entry as well. So explaining different scenarios here and how do you send those call those HTTP requests true. Now, the next one, copy link tuple. So let me close that one. Copy link tuple in the document library modern SharePoint. Dun. Oh, I'm missing a video. No. The document permissions is broken. If I do a copy link, I see the document permissions are broken, which is related on. So this is around the fact that the copy link or the PDF might not work properly if we have broken permissions. I think that's now the case. It's just a pity that the video actually at least is missing something to double check from the article. So next one is from David Warner, SharePoint PNP design assets. So this is around the design assets which are available from GitHub. So this is something new which Darcy is actually heading. So if you go here, SV design assets, Darcy has been adding additional assets all the time here. But basically, it's a set of reusable design assets which you can take advantage. She has created really great layouts and which will help you to define the use cases, for example, and the designs of the pages. So you're able to easily draw the designs and have a discussion, for example, with your customers. And David has then created a video which will actually explain what these are and how to use them and what are the scenarios, how to take advantage on them. So cool stuff.
Cool.
SPFX Managed Site Designs web part. So this one was from Chava Mendes. So this is a web part which can be used for designing or managing site designs. So basically, you can see their existing site designs and which they are associated and how many scripts there are, and then are able to actually do modifications for the site designs as well in certain level. Now, obviously, to be able to do modifications, you will need to have a tenant level permissions. So this would be something which you put on a site which is only meant to be used by the administrators. So kind of an interesting use case as well.
Yeah, because otherwise you would need to do it either in PowerShell, CLI, or REST, right? Because there is no UI for this available out of the box.
That is. It would be though cool if there would be a UI, but again, we are in engineering. We are
matter of priorities, matter of time.
Exactly. That's what it is. Now, moving on, articles, feedback analysis solution with no code and Office 365 by Caroline Trigo. So this is really around survey answers. We haven't actually even checked this one. So it was tagged with an SharePoint Dev Weekly. So please remember that tag. So let's see.
Solution that combines SharePoint Online, Power Apps. If you go a little bit up, there's a distribution. We came up call it a solution combination of SharePoint Online, Power Apps, Flows, Dynamics, and on-prem and Power BI.
Oh, yeah, that's a pretty cool setup actually. So let's see what do we actually have here.
Survey from event attendees. Questionnaire, storing a list.
Saving those in a SharePoint list, and then surfacing those in a Power BI.
Nice.
That's actually really cool setup. Without programming skills, it's also possible to do great things. Absolutely. Now, to be fair, it is absolutely 100% without programming skills, so you don't actually have to write any actual code, but you do need to understand quite a few softwares like Power BI and designing the models and importing stuff and all of that. So there's quite a few technical pieces.
The rest goes to store the data in, and there's a flow and web API to dynamic CRM. Yep. So web API is actually code.
We need a web API, correct.
Interesting.
Well, in this case, the Dynamic 365 is an on-prem. As we have Dynamic 365 and on-prem.
Maybe that's just the proxy for the API. I don't know. Anyways.
Could be. But cool design, cool kind of a layout or a thinking point how things could actually work as well. So really cool.
Going back to the article about another one back. This one. So we said that it would make sense to have this exposed in a site that is only accessible to admins. Now, how cool would it be if we had the ability to extend the admin portal with something like a single app part page from SPFX with additional admin experiences that we can build?
That's true, actually. That is a good idea. That's a great idea. I need to talk with Sohar or a few other people who own the admin experiences.
Right, because, it's impossible for you guys to build, for you and Microsoft to build everything that we need, because that would just take too long, right? So if for the meantime we can take care of the things that we need the most, well, that would alleviate your pain and our pain as well.
True, that would actually make a lot of sense. And then we would be able to implement together with community admin experiences, which are then exposed in the admin UIs. That actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely. Thinking.
There's a spec,
Cool. Moving on here. So Luis Valencia. Leveraging Office PnP core to create communication sites with save-based templates. So this one is around creating communication sites, and let's see what kind of pages we're actually then creating here. But creating the communication sites using the PnP sites core, the CSOM core, PnP CSOM core extension is relatively straightforward and easy. He's creating here the React layout, right? Let's see.
So actually, the model app, that is the model of a page, because you have the section, the column, control. So this is actually the modern page page model.
That is true. That's true. So let's actually then scroll down. The extracting page template. So basically, controller method to extract page template.
Get active tenants, hide collections,
Correct. Connecting to the tenant level, then connecting using app only here.
Yep.
And then connecting to the site and scrolling or
communication sites. Yeah.
Is it what it is, and then getting the page template. Or this is actually creating the new page template where we'll save the information, but then using the PMP CSAM core, basically collecting the information on the existing pages on the site, and then creating communication site with an example set of structures and example content basically on the site as well. That was pretty cool. So there's a communication site creation information, and then based on those page templates, which we now have on the memory extracted, creating new content based on them as well. Now, there's a few different ways how you could actually do this. You would be able to also use extract PMP templates from the existing sites and apply them, extract only modern pages from the existing site and apply them. So you wouldn't have to actually spend necessarily this amount of code for the storing of the structures. But again, debatable, pretty cool setup from Luis Valencia. So. Good. Then Warthaman dependency injection in SPFX using service scopes. We talked about this one with you, Waldek. You actually had a blog post on this one, an older version of the let's say how to do this from a while back, right?
Yeah. So I wrote about this in the context of the SPFX libraries that were released in preview with 1.8.
Yeah. Yeah. But this is really around the fact that how do we create a custom service, and how do we then consume that service easily without having a direct dependency on the service, right?
Exactly. Yes.
You're able to then request from the service scope an instance or access to that service, and then you're able to use them. So pretty cool.
Yeah, and if you think about this, like this makes actually perfect sense with the libraries, because with that you can decouple references. So you could have, for example, the library that does data or the DAO, the access layer on premises versus in test, different one, another one on in a cloud. Or if you are ISV, you could have one for SPL, the other one for on-prem. So there are different things that you could do following this approach.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. It's a really good pattern to take advantage in SPFX. Absolutely. Yep. Cool. And there's 3 different examples and 3 different kind of use cases here as well for anybody to take advantage. Really great stuff from Warthaman. And then the last one from Laura was around the cloning teams and configuring tabs with Microsoft Graph and configuring SharePoint and Files tabs. So basically, how can we use Microsoft Graph to create Microsoft Teams structures and then associate them to point to SharePoint? And that's actually pretty cool. Because you quite often probably want to have let's say a configuration or standardized way how the team setup will look like. So it wouldn't start from scratch either. So you could actually have the teams pointing to the SharePoint side behind of the teams, and then you could expose maybe the news from that side and all of that stuff. So Laura is basically then explaining how to make that happen. And it is a 6-step series related on between each other around accessing things. And then the final piece is that how do we configure the SharePoint tab? Which reminded me, this is exactly what we need to do anyway for the PMP engine. So the PMP tenant template engine will support team structures relatively soon. Most likely, unfortunately, not from April release, but from the May release, it will be definitely there. So
nice.
You're able to then define the standard tenant level layouts and multiple site collections and site designs and all of that stuff, but including also teams and actually users and groups also to be created in Azure and all of that stuff. So the scale is of the engine is growing.
So with that, I think that brings us to an interesting question. Will the provisioning engine use a custom XML structure for different elements? Or will it use the JSON structure that can be also used in the Microsoft Graph?
Fair point. That is an ongoing discussion. How do we actually want to make this happen? Right now, what we're planning to do, because we want to get the initial version out relatively fast, is to keep on supporting and keep on doing the existing model, which would be the XML/JSON model, but it's a unique custom model within the engine. The engine itself supports both JSON serialization or XML serialization, so you can actually do both. Now, in the long run, there is an ongoing discussion on moving the whole system to be only JSON specific, which has then some downsides, but it has some benefits. So it's a kind of a win-win, a win-lose-win situation, so to say.
Well, I mean, the reason that I'm asking is not about more from the whether XML or this, so which format to choose, but more there's an existing schema available. Correct. So will that be adopted, or will it be a custom thing for PnP?
So potentially yes in the future. Right now it will be a custom thing. So it's just realities of life that it's right now more XML based, and then that's causing an implications and rechanging the whole engine by May, even though it's the 1st of April, would be a challenge considering the resources and times.
Well, you could just say team, and then embed JSON blob in that, but
inside of the XML, sure.
Yes,
that's
see data block, and I don't see an issue.
True. Yeah, that's true. Let me actually stop the present then. But yeah, it's an interesting discussion, absolutely. In the long run, I think we need to change the whole thing to JSON. But let's see how this goes. And how do we're planning to do a larger refactoring of the whole thing as part of the .NET standard version of the thing. So we don't want to do it right now.
Sure. So any news when that is about to come, or is it still no ETA?
No ETA, which we can promise, unfortunately. There's obviously 2 big conferences coming up relatively soon, actually 3, where we could hopefully announce something, but let's see.
So it will be done on Friday. Just we don't know which month and year.
Which Friday. That is true. Let's make this happen on Friday. Okay, cool.
Which Friday?
Yes. Indeed. That reminded me on a bad joke. Back in, when was it, 10 years ago, we built a additional house in our summer place, and the target was to make that the whole house to be built by the midsummer. And we succeeded the midsummer of the following years. But
there you go, right? So this is exactly the way it works, right?
Yeah. This can't be that difficult, so of course we'll just make it happen.
Midsummer, yeah. Just tell you which year, yeah.
Exactly.
A midsummer.
A midsummer. What is the deadline? A midsummer. Okay, cool. So that's how I go. Anyway, so this week, I know that at least on my side, we're gonna definitely work on the documentation, guidance, sample updates on the SPFX and our dev stuff. There's some training material updates coming up pretty soon as well. Nice. Which is pretty cool. And we keep on evolving the SPFX training package for everybody. The adoption of SPFX broke huge numbers again on last month, so it's good to see that people are adapting. That's faster and faster. So
yeah, but that is actually an interesting thing for which I do not know the reason why and how it exactly works. But on the other hand, the customers, many customers to whom I talk are like, no, we're not customizing, we're not building anything, we're just doing out of the box, we're doing themes or flow. And then on the other hand, we see like the biggest growth in SPFX ever. So yeah, I still don't. Yeah. I cannot explain like how these do coexist.
That's and it's kind of one of the SPFX, and especially the SharePoint Dev platform. It's an interesting challenge even internally for us because you used to have long discussions with our management chain on what is your objective, what is your target for the growth, and it's like, well, technically we would be more successful as an SP engineering if there would not be any need for any extensibility, right? Because if out-of-the-box functionalities will fulfill all of the business requirements, then there's no need for dev platform. But then
coming from where we're coming from the past, where people were accustomed to changing anything and everything.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's not a reality is it?
So it's kind of an interesting balance on what do we want to bring, and obviously extensibility and customizations are not bad, but we want to bring the extensibility and customizations in a way that it doesn't block the evolved and the new versions of the on-premises capability. The out-of-the-box capabilities, the first-party capabilities. So, and that's been really the battle, and it's still constantly we're seeing the feedback in the SP dev issues or in the social media where I'm too limited. I need to do blah blah blah. Why are you taking away a custom master page? So clearly, we're not being successful of explaining what is the benefits out of the model what we're actually using, which is interesting. So
yeah,
but there are reasons. The reasons are there. We want to make sure that we don't do the same mistakes as we did with farm solutions and actually even add-in solutions. The farm solutions, I mean, at least personally saw a lot of deployments which were completely blocked to take advantage of the latest version of SharePoint because of the customization. So they were basically then stuck on an older version.
That you will never allow people to upload their DLLs to your farms.
Correct.
That is not going to happen.
And that is true as well. Yeah. So, but yeah, we will definitely have more extensibility points for SPFX and the modern capabilities. How, where, when, more details on that in upcoming conferences, if nothing else. So
on Friday. Just not which Friday.
Well, yeah. But to be fair, in the last community call, for example, and last Thursday, we did go through the roadmap of SPFX, and we did mention that there will be more extensibility points, but we want those to be introduced in a safe way, so in a way that people don't harm themselves. So because just the fact that you can have a custom master page would have a significant impact, so to say.
Yeah, so, and also the fact, not to mention the fact that 365 is getting updates every week.
Yep.
Right. So if you were to have a custom master page, basically every week you would need to ensure that everything you need to have to make the use of the latest abilities available is still there. And you would have to basically play a game. You would put yourself in a place where there would be your full-time work to ensure that everything is there, and when things are added, that they do not collide with the things that you do, which, to be honest, isn't a viable approach.
Sure. But then to be fair, I personally at least 100% understand because, and you know this as well, from the perspective that where do we come from? SharePoint.
I mean, you're talking to me like I've built SharePoint public-facing website for years.
Yeah, exactly.
The one thing you don't want your public-facing website to be is to look like SharePoint.
Yes, indeed. Well, that was exactly the same with the global intranets as well. So everybody wanted to have their fully scaled and custom branding, and now we're kind of trying to teach people away from that. And it's an interesting discussion. One step at a time, that's the right direction, if nothing else. But because again, just to repeat the story, the reason why we want to do this is that we want to make sure that whenever we introduce new capabilities, customers and partners can get benefit out of them. The end users will get them immediately, which is then a change management challenge, which is, but anyway. It's an endless fight of these things, right?
It is.
Anyway, I think that's on that bombshell, but I think that's it for this one. And quite a few articles, good discussion, and we'll come up with a new SP Dev Weekly in a week. Please keep on using the SP Dev Weekly hashtag so we'll know what you are doing, right?
Exactly.
Bye-bye.
You just said everything. There's nothing to add. You said, yes, do it.
yes. And we need to figure out who's going to be our visitor next week. So that's something which we haven't yet.
Maybe that is something for our community. If there is anybody whom you would like to have us to have on the show, let us know.
Yes, that's a great idea. Absolutely. We'll do our best to get the person in the show. So absolutely. Excellent. That's it. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.